Okay, so I thought what I'd do is just tell you, in providing an overview of H2H, the Hudson Conservation Initiative, tell you the story of how we came to be, and just give you some context to where we are within the initiative. So in the beginning, it started with conversations across the state line between the Fairfield County Regional Conservation Partnership, which many members are here today, Westchester Land Trust, and Hysted. And the conversations in the beginning were just learning about each other's activities. And one of the things we learned about that, through those early meetings was simply that there's a shared region here that weren't looking at before. Fairfield County was just looking at Fairfield County, Westchester primarily just looking at Westchester. And we really saw that we have a shared landscape, that there are urban areas, there's suburban areas, exurban areas, there's rural areas. There are woodlands, and these woodlands provide many of the values that woodlands all across the Northeast provide. Some of them clean the air, filter water, store carbon, provide wildlife habitat, etc. And like many lands across New England, ours are owned by thousands of individuals and families. And so that was a significant kind of recognition. The other thing we realized is that, actually, behind here. So this is our region, and as you can see, Great Swamp is part of that territory there. We also realized that these lands owned by individuals and families, thousands of individuals and families, contain or buffer tributaries that contribute to drinking water supply reservoirs that serve millions of people in New York and Connecticut. And some of the boundaries of those watersheds that are shown here and here cross the state line. We also, in learning more about our region, realized that some of these private lands have rich biodiversity, but they have, based on their landform complexity, bring out some words that, and I have a great graphic that will describe this very, very clearly. But due to their landform complexity and their different geology, they'll be providing kind of the stage for rich biodiversity in the future, even with climate change. And this is areas of above average resiliency. We share this. This is part of, I think, in the past, the biotic corridor in Westchester, and it played a significant part of a Northern Connecticut strategic conservation plan that FCRCP developed when we were just 10 towns. So we recognize that we share this landscape, both reservoirs and this landscape with above average resiliency to climate change. Okay, so bear with me. So this concept of resiliency, we recognize that scientists from the Nature Conservancy who tell us that these three elements are the things that we need to look for in areas of high resilience. So it's complexity of landforms, connectivity of natural systems, so it's unfragmented by developments, and different geology. And I think this graphic really shows this very well. So imagine a landscape with changes in elevation, different geology, so diversity below ground, a lot of nooks and crannies, animals and plants with climate change can move to higher elevations. They can move northward. If they can, they will. And so you're going to be looking at maps later that will be showing areas of above average resiliency to climate change. And those areas have certain characteristics. Those characteristics, they're above ground characteristics and below ground characteristics. And the TNC have developed this science. They're promoting it, and groups like Open Space Institute are helping to educate conservationists about protecting not only habitat for today, but for tomorrow. So it's this idea of protecting the stage, even though the plants and animals will change as they move northward. So it's a new concept. And the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is because you're going to be looking at maps. You're going to show this in dark green. The dark green are show areas with above average resiliency to climate change versus other areas that are flat or have a lot of development and have low resiliency to climate change. They don't provide a stage for future plant and animals. If anybody has questions about that, the whole day will be an opportunity to ask and get those questions answered. So again, just in words, again, we're talking about unfragmented natural areas, cliffs, ravines. We're actually in one. This is part of an area that's supposedly, have above average resiliency and it stretches all the way to Richfield. So this idea of microclimates, I think of an English muffin, and turning an English muffin like this with all the nooks and crannies up the slopes and top, and really providing plants and animals places to go as the temperature changes and climate changes, versus a level, like a flat field. That's the differences. Plus, different geology provides different soil types, and I won't get into all that. There's the sciences, you can get into the science and be lost. It can be easy to get lost in the science. The other thing we learned when we got together was that we shared common interests. We're interested in increasing in Fairfield County, in the RC Fairfield County Regional Conservation Partnership, our interest is in increasing the number of landowners who are stewarding and conserving their land as part of our goals. And Westchester Land Trust was also interested in that. And Minus River Gorge is interested in that. We also realized that there are dozens of conservation organizations and agencies that have been doing this for decades. And they have decades-long experience in this. So the question is, how do you help increase the capacity or increase the ability of groups to reach out and engage with more landowners? They've already had a lot of experience doing that. And one of the things that we had the benefit of is a landowner outreach initiative that took place, it just finished a couple weeks ago. It took place in central and northern New England. This is these large priority landscapes that were roughly 30 organizations, 30 NGOs working with the Northeast State Forests Association. They were working together for 3 years to study and to learn how best to engage landowners in conversations that would lead to more stewardship and conservation, and more quickly than they would have without partnership, without using these new techniques and methods and messages. And those groups had been working for decades within their landscapes, and they learned something. They learned new things. And we decided, well, we'd like to do that in our landscape, but in order to take the best methods, those best practices, and apply it to our focus areas, we needed training, and we needed to apply for our own landscape scale restoration grant. That's that U.S. Forest Service program, and that's what we did. With all of your help, a lot of your help, we applied for this grant, and we got the funding to pay for the training and to pay for staff time to actually do a lot of this focus area work, the mapping, database development, etc. In the narrative we have, in the narrative of our proposal, so these are basic goals, our basic conservation goals, are to sustain and enhance water resources and habitat and quality. So sustain the habitat and sustain the quality of water resources and wildlife habitat, and then to adapt these resources to climate change. So that's a big part of what this workshop is about, is how do we do that? I'll be talking a little bit about, in a few moments, about how we're targeting our outreach to find the most important parcels. But ultimately, when we have those parcels, we know who we're working with. The question is, what are we going to do with those folks? That's what today's about. I'll mention that further. So this is our region with the focus areas. These are all focus areas. I took our map, our image, and I did a little bit of a drawing around, and I have Gray Swamp there as well. But our intent in this initiative is to reach out and to engage with individual and family forest owners of the most important parcels in our region. And the most important parcels for this initiative, for this context, are lands that contain or buffer tributaries that contribute to drinking water supply reservoirs and or other important watersheds, and lands that contain areas of above average resiliency to climate change. Another way we're focusing this work is working within these 13 focus areas. And in each case, each focus area includes at least 2 towns, and 4 of them straddle the state line. Now, the other important thing I just want to mention, and hopefully this will be, I'll mention this a couple of times more, is that when I say we're going to be reaching out to those landowners with really important parcels, you're going to be utilizing your local knowledge of the landscape of the landowners. And some of these landowners will be people you've already have relationships with, that you've already been reaching out to. But it's hoped, and that part of the kind of approach, is that you'll be connecting with other landowners you haven't yet connected with. And that's what happened in the other initiative. Well, likely that was one of the big kind of benefits from the other initiative, is getting unengaged landowners into the room. So that's something we hope to have happen with this initiative as well. In the spring, we had 2 other trainings. One training focuses on, in January, will be on, once we have the attention of landowners, what will we do with them? What kind of activities have been shown to be very effective in conveying information to landowners and having them increase their awareness of their options? The other training will be in late February, and that will be on the messaging and the marketing. What are the messages that will hook the landowners better than anything you've done so far? That's the goal. Is to use messaging and marketing that's targeted to a particular landowner group. So you're not trying to communicate to everybody, you're communicating to the people that you really want in the room. And again, the whole point is, once we get folks in the room, or in the room, an event, whatever, the idea is to increase their awareness of the value of their land. So that's one thing. The other is to give them an opportunity to meet like-minded neighbors, with neighbors. Could be close by, or could be within their focal area. And to give you an opportunity to establish a relationship in which you're helping them with guidance and information, and help those who want to steward and conserve their land to be able to do so more easily. I think this is a great slide that shows it's very much people to people we're talking about, not experts to people, landowner to landowner. And the other thing is, this is another time for me to mention again, is each focal area is different. When we piloted this in Fairfield County last year, we learned that in the Bethel focus area had a different culture than the ones in Weston. So in each focal area, you'll have a different culture potentially. I won't take that for sure, but likely a different culture, and you'll be able to bring your knowledge of the landscape, of the landowners, to think about, well, what do these landowners really want to do? What will really get their attention? And what will they want to do on the land? Are there landowners that might be an ambassador to other landowners? Are there landowners who are already passionate about their land and could serve to reach out to other landowners better than you could? So those are the things that you'll be able to be working on in your focal area. So your involvement, obviously, your involvement and local knowledge is key to the success of this initiative. So I know that some folks mentioned numbers and whatnot. Which focal area is this? Does anybody recognize this one?
It's 2.
Oh, that's the one that you can see. Right, what's that one there?
We are calling it number 2.
Okay.
It includes Yorktown, Somers, and a little bit of Putnam County.
Number 2, okay. Putnam Valley, Yorktown, Somers. Okay, number 2. So when I look at this, I see the dark green. Those are areas of above average resiliency, and I think, well, in an ideal world, we have enough resources to offer those landowners funding, payment for easements, or be able to acquire their lands and have conservation be a main focus of this. I'll admit that that's If I have a bias, that's a bias I have. But in all honesty, this initiative is more about stewardship than conservation. This stewardship has a significant role to play in this initiative, in the sense that what I hear back from land trusts in Fairfield County is that they're talking to landowners about conservation all the time, protecting land all the time. Stewardship gives them an opportunity to engage them in their land in a way that's a longer-term relationship. And a couple of things can happen. One is landowners, if they adopt these practices, they can affect the quality of their landscape in a relatively short period of time. They can affect the water quality in tributaries, they can enhance the habitat for wildlife of their land. The other thing that can happen is with stewardship, we're talking, they have the possibility of being involved in a focus area which is part of a network of protected and unprotected lands, and even the unprotected lands are providing value to the landscape. So this is, we call this the Danbury, the Ridgefield, Danbury, Bethel, Reading focus area. This is where H2H, that's where you are now. And another thing about stewardship that I want to mention is that, and one of the reasons that this focus area approach kind of works, is that this is a long-term, this is a 2-year initiative, but this is a long-term endeavor. You know, you're identifying the areas where you most want to see results over time, where you want to see the connectivity over time. The idea is engaging landowners in stewardship practices might help them move towards a land protection project in their future. And that's also part of the idea behind this project. And that's why the other initiative involved a lot of organizations that saw stewardship as a way to kind of stewardship. This is actually one of the key results of the past initiative. It almost doesn't matter what event you run. I mean, it has to be really well run, but it's the follow through. It's the relationship that you have with landowners and help, once you connect with them and you see they have an awareness about the value of the land, and they're excited and energized, that you manage that relationship to the extent that you can and help them, guide them towards a new adopted practice or actually a land conservation project on their land. You help them achieve their objectives. That's really what this is all about. You're just doing this, instead of doing it everywhere, you're doing it here in your focus area that you share with other groups. Okay. Now this is segue to the next session. So now we're at this point. Imagine you've got these maps, you identify the most important priority parcels, and you're ready to go. Then the question is, okay, well, what do we do now? We have Bill's talking about these practices. Well, what are we talking? What kind of practices, and how do we adapt those practices to climate change? Okay, so that's what's next.